From the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine on this gusty, rainy, windy Wednesday morning. Nick Barris here. Got a good show on tap for you. Hey, don't head out, okay? Just stay and join in the conversation with us. And it may be something where we're in a situation to answer a question for you personally, or maybe a loved one or someone you know. Of course, this past couple of weeks ago, we celebrated Veterans Day here, and a lot of talk continues about veterans, and it will come up during the political campaigns and all this. Proper care, help, what we can do to assist our veterans once they come back from serving for us overseas. We don't want to forget about them when they come back, and too often sometimes I think that may happen when you hear about all the complaints against the VA at times and services being slow and veterans needing help. We're going to get into that today with a wonderful program here in the state that's unique to the country to a degree, even though this is in other places with the events. We're going to be talking about Operation Stand Down. It's out there for veterans here in the state of Tennessee. We're going to talk about some of the programs that are available. We're going to talk about the changing veteran population and what they need. And I want to take your phone calls to jump into the conversation if you get a chance at 737-7587. With us this morning is the Executive Director of Operation Stand Down here in the state, John Crenson. Good morning to you, John.
Good morning, Nick.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much.
You know, we do several shows here, with regard to veterans. There's different programs out there that help some veterans, finding work, getting a home. And there's some wonderful programs out there. And yet I always get the sense that more is needed and there are services not being provided. I wanted to ask you first, just kind of to lay out what Operation Stand Down does and what makes it unique here in the state of Tennessee as opposed to elsewhere in the country, because you get federal funding, right?
That's correct. That's correct. In fact, the bulk of our funding these days is federal funding, something we're looking to change to give us some more flexibility, but that is where the bulk of our funding comes now.
All right, so federal dollars. And so I asked you before the show, is this in every state?
There are stand-down events in most states across the country, but as far as a full-service organization like ours, titled Operation Stand Down, we are the only one in the country, and there are very few like us that go by different names.
Okay.
But we are VA-approved service center and the only one in the state of Tennessee like ours.
All right, and tell us what it means then, VA-approved service center. I mean, there are a lot of services, organizations that help veterans. What does Operation Stand Down do? Okay,
so Operation Stand Down is a full service center for serving veterans. And the gist of what we do is to help veterans reconnect to society.
Okay, meaning stand down. They're standing down from their service overseas or wherever they were to reconnect because they've been away for a while. And
That's right.
Who knows what things they've gone through, some horrible stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Many of them have come off multiple deployments.
Sure. Or
many of them have come off a career on active duty, or maybe they did a stint of 4 years or so. Many may have been in veteran status for the last 20, 25 years and haven't served, for that long. But all of a sudden they're in a crisis or they find themselves in need, and that's where Operation Stand Down can come in and help.
Okay, and I guess, all right, and that's in general terms. Again, when a veteran comes back, Operation Stand Down, do they have to seek out help from you? Is that how that works?
That is how that works for the ones.
That's why I assume we're doing this show, to get the word out more.
Exactly. We want to make sure that they know that we exist to come through our doors. They also are referred to us. Many times they're referred to us by the VA even.
Okay.
So, because there's many services we can provide directly that the VA doesn't provide, or we're an extension of some of the VA services. For example, with our transitional housing program. So we help veterans in that case who are homeless and are trying to find their way back into society. They've made that commitment that they want to break a lifestyle of homelessness and become contributing members to society again. So we put them through a program that helps them deal with whatever demons they may be dealing with or whatever obstacles are holding them back from being contributing members, and we work through them to acknowledge what those issues are. Then we work with them. They have a place with us in a transitional house. We have 7 homes with 42 beds in the central Nashville area. And they work through that program. They learn how to live with roommates. They get adjusted to having to follow a regimen. And then we work with them on employment and getting them jobs. We work with them on budgeting and saving money. So once they are stabilized with whatever their personal issue may be, once they are used to living on their own and working with a budget, once they have a certain amount of dollars saved in a savings account, and once they have a job that they have some regularity with, then they are ready to graduate our program, move into permanent housing, and on with their lives. Now we'll continue to follow up with them for up to 9 months at least, just to make sure that they have all the support they need to be firmly rooted on their feet.
I mean, that's awesome. And again,
It is,
these are the veterans then that can be referred to you, or they can seek you out. And in this situation, again, it's a service provided to them. This is free for them, correct?
Exactly. Now, once they get into a few months into our program, they pay us a nominal fee, but that is primarily to help them with understanding budgeting, and that they have to pay something to get something. But it is
sure,
a
and
very,
by then,
very nominal
hopefully, they
fee.
have a job at that point, which is where that money comes from.
Exactly, and they don't start paying that until they have that job, and they're working regularly with that.
Okay, yeah, I want to get into more specifics of the details, what services are provided, and you mentioned the one about transitional housing, but I want to get a sense of what the veteran population is like right now. I mean, and you kind of mentioned to me, is there a changing demographic to it to some degree? What do you see with our veterans right now?
Yeah, there is. So, for example, Operation Stand Down has its roots in serving the chronically homeless veteran population that developed after the Vietnam War.
Gotcha.
And the Stand Down events, which was basically a 3-day event called a Stand Down, as you referenced earlier, it's a military term. So when you're engaged in combat, you are on the front lines, you're engaged, and then it's time to have a stand down. So the soldiers pull back, they rest, they recuperate, they reconsolidate, and then they're ready to go back and re-engage in the mission. So that stand down is that rest, recuperation, and recovery period. So that's what we provide for the veterans who need some recuperation and need some recovery so they can go back into society. So the first stand down was in San Diego in 1988, when 4 individuals who worked for various different agencies in San Diego said, hey, you know, we have a chronically homeless population of veterans that have not been addressed in a comprehensive way for 15 or 20 years, and we've got to do something about it. So they started the first Stand Down event. Well, the concept took off like wildfire all across North America, and in Nashville we had our first 3-day Stand Down event in 1993. And we continued to do that for 6 years, and then in 1999 the committee was approached by the authorities with Metro Nashville, Davidson County, and asked if we would take over a transitional housing program for veterans. And thus our full service center, full-time, 365 days a year, was born in 1999. And so for 15 years we've been a full-time organization serving veterans. But again, the roots were in chronic homelessness.
Okay.
So what we're seeing now, there's still chronically homeless veterans out there, but what we're seeing from the drawdown from the current wars, and those just kind of naturally matriculating off active duties as the current wars, they are not chronically homeless necessarily, you know, for 10 or 15 years of a lifestyle. They're either experiencing an initial or a second episode of homelessness, or they're at risk of becoming homeless in the first place. So part of our transition as an organization is to be relevant to the veterans' needs as they exist today. And that's not necessarily chronically homeless. What it means is prevention from becoming homeless in the first place.
How long usually before they come to you after they return back stateside or once they've left the service? I mean, they're out there giving it a run for the money, and then they find out maybe after 6 to 9 months, wow, I'm homeless, or I can't find a job, or I'm dealing with PTSD. Or do some of them come to you straight out of the service?
It varies, and some do. So, for example, we may have some, especially if they come out of Fort Campbell and they're right here in the local area, but they're not rooted in Middle Tennessee. We may see them within the 30 or 60 days of when they come off duty. An example of one of our, almost textbook success stories was a gentleman who was a Vietnam War veteran from the late 60s, early 70s, and he moved on with his life after he came off duty. Now, remember, he got spat upon when he came home. He was not offered free lunches like I was. I'm a veteran from Iraq and Afghanistan campaigns. I still get free lunches when I have my uniform on for my guard duty. But he was making it through life, had a job in a very public and responsible position here in Nashville. And in the mid-2000s, triggered by something, perhaps having to do with the war on terror being on our TV screens all the time, his world fell apart. Now,
he had
it was 30, 35 years after he'd come off.
Psychologically, it just hit him.
Something happened. Something happened. He lost his family. He lost his job in the public trust. Yeah. But thankfully, he found his way to Operation Stand Down, and we were able to get him into our transitional housing program. He's back with his family. He's back with his career, the same career he had before. He's in the public trust, and he volunteers at Operation Stand Down and mentors veterans we have come through our doors there. So there's an example of someone that it was 35 years or so after he came off his duty and his time in the service.
Yeah, he had succeeded for a while. And that's what's so insidious about some of the things that they bring back, the soldiers, from this, that it can kind of be there and hopefully, you can be successful for a period like he was. And that's what's so interesting, the story you just told, is that all of a sudden something triggered it and it came back years later. and his world collapsed around it.
That's right.
And that, in a way, if you're a veteran that comes back, and I have not, but you do, and you wonder, is there something in there that might trigger in me? And hopefully not, and you get the help and counseling you need. But then if it does, Operation Stand Down is one of the organizations that's there. And we're going to get into more of this. And I want to get more into the psychology of it as well, for how some of these individuals end up where they end up. But we're going to take a break. When we come back, Joe and others, we've got the lines open, 615-737-7587. If you want to join in the conversation, if you're a veteran especially, and you have comments about the needs or services that you felt you could have used, or if you have a question about if Operation Stand Down can help you, you're welcome to join in the conversation. That's what this show's about today. We want to try to help as many as we can. We'll take a break, and we'll be back with your calls and more of our conversation with our guests right after this.